So, welcome back to our becoming a cybersecurity professional boot camp. So, I think, I guess we can officially call this a boot camp here. So, because of how we're putting this into series and um, ensuring that everyone is on the same page on on this learning path towards becoming a cybersecurity professional. So without wasting much of our time, so let's just get into our next topic, which is on frameworks for protection against cyber threats. So last time we studied cyber threats, so right now we're going to be studying frameworks for protecting frameworks for protection against cyber threats. So without wasting much time, let's get into this.
The era of trusted computing started in the 1980s with the publication of a series of books on the security requirements for systems used by the United States Department of Defense. These books were known as the Rainbow series of books. The best known book in the Rainbow series is the Orange Book, which described the security design of a computer that can be trusted to handle both unclassified and classified information, known as a multi-level secure or trusted computer. The Orange Book describes the security design and subsequent evaluation of security for an information system. It introduces four key concepts in information security: a reference monitor, which mediates access to system resources; a formal security model for reading and writing information; the idea of a trusted computing base as a subsystem containing all the security code; and the testing required to achieve various levels of assurance. The reference monitor concept is an essential element of any system that provides multi-level secure computing facilities and controls. The reference monitor enforces access controls between subjects and objects of the system. The subject may be a user or a program module, and the object may be a data file or a restricted system function. I'll just use the term user as the more common term for subject. The reference monitor has three essential characteristics. It must be tamper-proof, it must always be invoked, and it must be small enough to be completely analysed and tested. The Orange Book introduces the Bell-LaPadula scheme for managing multi-level information flows. Using this scheme, the book presents two approaches to security. Discretionary access control is used for applying security within the same classification of information, to provide a means of restricting information access on a need-to-know basis. It requires an access control list to be maintained by an administrator who authorises subjects to access objects. This is the normal folder and file control scheme we use today. Mandatory access control is the Bell-LaPadula scheme, in which each subject holds a certain level of access rights or clearance, and an object is labelled at a certain level of sensitivity. The security labels which define the level of sensitivity in the Orange Book include restricted, confidential, secret, and top secret. Mandatory access control has two rules. The first rule is the simple security rule, which states that a user at a certain clearance level cannot read anything which has a label at a higher sensitivity level, which by definition they do not have access to. The second rule is the star security rule, which states that a user at a certain clearance level cannot write down into a file which is labelled at a lower level, as this may expose sensitive information to subjects not cleared to access it. The heart of a trusted computer system is its trusted computing base, which contains the elements of the system responsible for security, all within the security perimeter. The TCB includes hardware, firmware, and software critical to protection. It must be designed and implemented such that nothing outside the trusted computing base is sensitive or relevant to managing security. A TCB should be as simple as possible, consistent with the functions it has to perform, in order to enable adequate testing. The final and probably most important part of the Orange Book is the classification scheme it introduced for evaluating assurance of systems. In short, The scheme provides for 4 levels of system assurance. Within each level, there are one or more tiers. The levels are D1, C1 to C2, B1 to B3, and A1. We'll look further at security assurance levels later in the course. The inclusion of cyber
We just looked at the Orange Book early concept in computer security, and you can see what that introduced us to different security models, the discretionary access model, also the Bella Lapuda. So these are actually security models or access control models, that helps us uh, um, uh, in, of course, computer security or in cyber security world. So and yeah, I want to also believe that, of course, those concepts that were introduced to us, were something that we had a grasp understanding of. Like I said, I'm going to be laying, emphasis on things that I feel that we should take, to note. And what we just watched, on the Orange Book is actually a concept that I would advise us to, be very familiar with, especially the security models. Of course, so we have the discretionary, we have the mandatory access, and one of the, I think, control model that was mentioned. And so, one thing to note is under this topic on the frameworks for protecting against cybersecurity attacks, what we're going to be seeing more of is frameworks, security access controls, or things that has to do with standards, policies, and the likes. But of course, this is an aspect of cybersecurity that we can't take away from security generally, which is why I want us to pay attention to. So now we're going to be looking at the NIST cybersecurity frameworks, and if you looked at when we discussed earlier on cyber threats, there was a NIST framework that was brought up on the screen that I asked us to take a screenshot of and then read on that paper. So we're going to be having to know more in depthly, I believe, to an extent in this particular topic. But yeah, you guys know I like to talk too much, so let's get back to what we have.
cyberspace into national critical infrastructures was formally recognized by all nations at the Third Global Conference on Cyberspace, held in Seoul in 2013, with the publication of the Seoul Framework for a Commitment to Open and Secure Cyberspace. It states, "The global and open nature of the Internet is a driving force in accelerating progress towards development. Governments, businesses, organizations, and individual owners and users of cyberspace must assume responsibility for, and take steps to enhance, the security of their information technologies." In response to this, in 2014, the US National Institute of Standards and Technology issued the Framework for Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework has now become the de facto standard for cybersecurity. Let's take a look at it. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework is an action-oriented approach to security and consists of 3 elements: the Framework Core, the Framework Profile, and the Framework Implementation tiers. The Framework Core provides a set of activities to achieve cybersecurity, described in the 5 areas of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Each of these activities is decomposed into a total of 23 categories of security activities. For example, we can see that the detect group decomposes into the 3 categories of anomalies and events, security continuous monitoring, and detection processes. Going deeper, we can see that each of the categories is further decomposed into a set of controls. For example, the detection processes category is broken down into 5 subcategories: roles and responsibilities, compliant with requirements, activities are tested, detection information is communicated, and continuous improvement. Each of these subcategories is referenced to the relevant NIST, ISO, and COBIT standards. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework doesn't introduce its own set of controls. It provides a higher level framework which can be used to develop a contemporary cybersecurity profile for an organization, but it relies on existing control frameworks for its implementation. COBIT, ISA, otherwise known as IEC 62443, ISO 27000, and NIST SP 800-53.
Okay, so I mean, that was pretty much very self-explanatory. So there's nothing much to add on to what the instructor already, laid out to us. So let's just look at the adoption of the NIST cybersecurity frameworks right away.
The second component of the NIST cybersecurity framework is the framework profile. This is used to align business outcomes and cybersecurity activities, providing a view of risks and a development plan to bridge the two. The third and final component of the NIST cybersecurity framework is a maturity model for cybersecurity, known as the implementation tiers. The basic level of cybersecurity maturity is the partial implementation tier. This is characterized by enterprise risk management being somewhat ad hoc and reactive, where cybersecurity activities aren't based on risk objectives or business outcomes, and where there's little external collaboration. At the next level of maturity, risk management practices are formalized, but may not be adopted across the enterprise. There's informal sharing of cybersecurity information internally, but not externally. The third tier of maturity, repeatable, is where risk management is formalized and mandated as policy, and processes exist to respond to changes in risk. Collaboration and information sharing exists both internally and externally. The highest maturity level, adaptive, extends the third level with the awareness and agility to apply continuous changes to cybersecurity activities as a result of changes to assets, threat, and vulnerabilities. When adopting the cybersecurity framework for an organization, NIST recommends establishing two profiles. The first should represent the current state of cybersecurity, as assessed against the subset of enterprise-specific activities that have been selected as being required. This is what cybersecurity looks like now. The second should be the target state of cybersecurity, set as the acceptable level of risk against each of the enterprise-specific activities. A security plan of prioritized projects can then be defined to close the gap between the current and the target state framework profiles. For an organization that's starting up its cybersecurity program, there are some key actions required to take advantage of the cybersecurity framework. The first is to identify the key business outcomes, and then understand the threats and vulnerabilities to those outcomes. Create a profile, conduct a risk assessment, decide on the target profile, determine, analyze, and prioritize the gaps to create the action plan, and establish and execute a program to implement the plan.
Okay, very, very cool, interesting stuff there. That was really very understandable, by our instructor and explain to us the NIST cybersecurity frameworks. So there's also, a need for us to understand the basics of cyber risk, which is the next topic. Um, but just before we continue, I just want to, also bring to our attention. I know we know this already, guys. I'm sorry. I like to talk much. So we are doing the cybersecurity foundations. We have um we have other topics as well which we're going to cover on the learning path towards becoming a cybersecurity professional. So just once again, I just want to say this as a notion to just keep you geared up that at the end of this boot camp, following through the courses we have in this learning path, I can assure you that you already have the knowledge into becoming a cybersecurity professional. And of course, you're not just going to be learning about cybersecurity. Part of the boot camp is how to land your first cybersecurity job, and of course, things that are going to be useful for your career. I want to believe that at this point, you already have a LinkedIn profile, things like that, that will just get you started, and of course, be able to uh, put you in the right step, put you in the right path towards achieving what you want to achieve in your cybersecurity career. So let's move forward.
Risk is an essential part of doing business, whether it's taking a risk on a merger or acquisition, taking a risk that purchasing new equipment will be a cost effective investment, or whether there's sufficient plant protection to avoid injuries to workers. Management needs to understand their level of risk exposure and make sure that it's within their risk appetite. Cybersecurity is, at its heart, the management of risk related to internet connected businesses. This includes the threat of hackers and malicious software entering from the internet, the vulnerabilities of internet facing IT systems, and the attack countermeasures or controls, all of which affect how successful the business will be in meeting its desired outcomes. A standard approach to managing risk has been developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and its application is described in Special Publication 830.
So, for those who are really going to be interested in understanding standards, procedures, policies, who don't want to go into the aspect of ethical hacker penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, things like that, where you have to get your hands on technical, know-how and things of such. You just want to be able to develop proper standards, proper policies that will guide an organization towards assessing the cybersecurity risk. This is for you. This is for you.
Guide for conducting risk assessments. The International Standards Organization also provides guidance with its ISO 27005 Information Security Risk Management publication. While there are minor terminology differences, the intent of both documents is the same. Cyber risk focuses on the information technology assets we operate and the services we deliver. It starts with a threat event, which must be analysed to determine that the event will occur. This is done by considering the likely threat actors, their capabilities, and their resources. The intent or motivation needs to be considered. What is it that drives this threat actor to want to mount an attack? An attacker will only attack if the results outweigh the cost of attacking, and that depends on the value of the target to the threat actor. This could be financial gain, obtaining intelligence, disrupting services, or just peer recognition. Think about the scam emails you've received. Who is the likely threat actor? Might it be just a student looking for a couple of extra dollars? Or could it be an East European organised crime gang? Think about their capabilities and what it means for the sophistication of the attack. The next risk issue to consider is the set of vulnerabilities in the information and processing assets, databases, workstations, servers, and networks, which this event can exploit to cause damage. For instance, a data center in the basement of a building may be vulnerable to a flood event. A website may have a software vulnerability which can be exploited. A server without an uninterruptible power supply would be vulnerable to a power outage. However, not all vulnerabilities are equal. A flood may be catastrophic, with the whole data center out of action for weeks, whereas an attack which exploits a website flaw may just be a nuisance. Then we consider the impact to the business in the event the threat is realized. This is typically done by carrying out a business impact assessment to determine what systems will be affected, how this flows on to business processes, and the cost of service degradation or failure to meet critical levels of performance. Being able to describe a security event as a business impact is a powerful way of gaining the attention and the respect of the business, and being able to get a well-balanced business decision on what to do about the threat. Controls may have been put in place to protect the asset, and their effectiveness needs to be considered for each of the feasible threat scenarios. This will then allow calculation of the overall risk.
Okay, so that was really very interesting by our instructor on understanding cybersecurity risk and how to assess it. And of course, you could take out some very crucial point there, identifying the risk vulnerabilities. So something I'm going to add to it is, of course, as one who is looking at going into cybersecurity, and of course, you want to be on the regulatory compliance aspect, the GRC as it's popularly known. It's also very important that you work hand in hand, into understanding some technicalities, or those who have this knowledge of the technical know-how. And what do I mean? I mean, for you to be able to determine vulnerabilities, especially when you're doing your asset identification, you need to be able to know, okay, what are the vulnerabilities, what are these systems vulnerable to, and some of these systems, these servers, computers, as the case may be, are running on networks, and these are things that of course you need to be able to have a clear understanding of how they operate. IPs, you need to understand, of course, OSI models. You need to understand, okay, at what level, at what layer does this certain infrastructure operate on, things like that. So it's also very important that you work hand in hand, with, let's say, a penetration tester, a vulnerability assessor. Now, this doesn't mean that, of course, without these people, you're not able to, probably learn this on your own or know this on your own. It just implies that you need to, put in the extra work, the extra time, to go to, teach yourself to learn these skills as well. So no skills in cybersecurity is wasted. No skills is useless. Everything has a use. Everyone is useful. Everyone has their role. Everyone has their place in cybersecurity. I want to believe we are all enjoying this course. I'm enjoying the course myself, and I really hope you're all finding it useful. I'm beginning to let's get back, guys.
The Cybersecurity Risk Management Program starts with sourcing threat intelligence. Let's have a look at some sources of threat intelligence. A useful catalogue of threats can be found at Appendix E to the NIST special publication. This catalogue provides representative examples of adversarial threat events expressed as tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs.
So when we talk about TTPs, we're talking about tactics, techniques, and procedures. So, and of course, like we have right here on our screens, you can see the threat event. Now, I would also recommend, how I do it, uh, make a pause on the video to talk about something very important. Yeah. So, this link, I would advise you visit it. It's a PDF. You read on it, the threat event. See, this gives you an understanding. Now, these are things that you can also add onto your resume. You can also add onto your portfolio, saying, okay, you've done this research, you've understood how this certain types of threat works, and their tactics, their techniques, their procedures, how they are being launched onto a system. Now, a potential employer wants to hear this. When you speak this way, they look at you that, okay, this person has an experience, this person has a know-how on how these certain types of threats works. So it's just an added knowledge to your knowledge bank. Let's get back into it.
And non adversarial threat events. Another useful source of TTPs is the MITRE ATT&CK site, which is used in MITRE's cybersecurity resiliency framework.
Yes, guys. So this is another very, very important website. So I've conducted several trainings on cybersecurity, ethical hacking, penetration testing, things like this. And most of the time, I always bring my students to this link or to this platform or to this particular web page on attack. There's also the defense mitre, because of course if you have the attack, we should also have the defense. So we did a recent training on SOC analyst training, where I of course introduced these platforms, this websites, the web pages to students that attended, and told them to pay attention. Right now on this website, you can see the different techniques, tactics, procedures on performing reconnaissance, resource development, initial access, execution, persistence. I don't expect that the instructor will go in depth into each of these procedures or these tactics, but of course, it's very useful for us on our own to go read on these things and then understand how they work and how they relate to cybersecurity. This is what makes you a professional. So not just watching all the videos without doing your personal research, personal adding to your knowledge, your personal homework, and then you feel okay, you're now a professional. No, what this entails, why this course is designed to make you a professional is because of the resources that you are being exposed to now, and that's why I told you it's my joy what it is that I am doing right now, being here with us studying because, like I said, I want to see us get better at cybersecurity. Okay, guys, I think you guys know the point I'm driving at. Now, let's get back to studying.
This is a detailed source of information on who the threat actors are and how they carry out their cyber attacks. Many of the threats that have been turned into exploits and are being seen in cyber attacks are listed in the ExploitDB database. For example, here we see the details of an exploit against the smart RG router. There are a number of companies that publish malware analysis reports, such as this one produced by VMray. These are useful for gaining an insight into the contemporary techniques being used by attackers. There are 4 possible treatments once an assessment has identified the risk. Risk acceptance, where the risk is within the business's appetite. Risk avoidance, where it's better to stop doing that line of business than take the risk. Risk transfer, where a third party takes the risk, such as insurance to cover the risk should it eventuate. And risk mitigation, where controls are implemented to reduce risk. Risk mitigation and the protection of business outcomes which they provide means implementing controls in the form of cybersecurity policies, processes, and technical solutions. We'll cover controls shortly.
All right, guys, let me just quickly talk a little bit on this risk treatment. When we talk about risk treatment, just as the instructor has explained to us, you accept the risk, you avoid the risk, you transfer the risk, or you mitigate the risk. When you accept a risk, it's like buying a car, especially in, let's say, places like Africa, in Nigeria specifically, where you know the road is bad. When you buy the car, you accept certain risk like, okay, my tires, my 4 tires are not going to last me 2 years without me changing them for once. That's you accepting the risk. The risk is you getting the car in the first place and then spending money on changing tires. But then you accept that okay, this is it. Then you get it. You get the car. You can avoid that risk of spending your money or your car getting damaged by doing what? By driving on safer roads, by moving, by relocating to maybe some places in Nigeria. I'm not going to mention it. I'm not trying to promote any states right now. That being said, you can see how you've avoided changing your tires twice or in 2 years multiple times. You can transfer the risk simply by doing what? By maybe getting a car insurance, whereby when your tires get punctured, you don't have to bear the cost of changing those tires. You transfer the risk. Of course, your insurance company does that. I'm using the car as an illustration so you understand this risk. But when it comes to cybersecurity, we should get the point. You can mitigate this risk by not getting the car at all. So you can see how you can treat risk. So have this mindset into when you're dealing actually with cybersecurity infrastructures. So when you talk about in the IT now let's relate it. What is it going to be when you get a system, when you install certain applications, when you visit certain sites, there's some risk that comes with it. Yeah, okay, you're getting a Windows 10 system. Definitely there risk like, of course, you need to always constantly update your system. There risk like you getting into being exploited by certain vulnerabilities that are known to Windows 10. These types of risk are there. Do you understand? You can accept this risk by ensuring that okay, you constantly patch your systems. You can avoid these risks by, of course, always turning on what's it called, the Windows Defender, constantly to ensure that okay, whenever or once rather there's a intrusion, your antivirus detects so the Windows Defender fights against to avoid that vulnerability being exploited. You can transfer these risks by probably maybe deploying your Windows or whatever systems or application that you have or whatever files you have on your Windows that are very critical on the cloud, having them to to be backed up, or things like that. And then you can mitigate by not even maybe getting a Windows at all, or you probably look for or you get a virtual machine, and then you run your Windows on a virtual machine. That way you're secure, so your bare metal isn't being tampered with. By the way, virtual machines, bare metals, hypervisors, these terms are terms we're going to get familiar with soon as we progress. But I just really wanted to hop in on that. You guys know how we do it, yeah? Once there's something that clicks to my head, and then I feel like, oh, I need to tell this to these guys, man. They need to have this knowledge as well. I just pause the video, I'll just drop it to you guys, Jerry. Guys, let's get back, man.
A key part of risk management is maintaining a record of the risks that have been identified and, where relevant, tracking the progress of work to reduce the risk. The normal way to record risks is in a risk register. This could be a manual record, but more usually it's automated. The basic form of automation is using a spreadsheet, as shown here. Larger organizations may use the more sophisticated governance, risk and controls, or GRC solutions, although the principle, as far as managing risk, is the same. The risk register contains the basic risk information such as an ID and name, classification information, and the risk owner. It also contains a summary of the consequences of a risk being realized. The risk information is usually presented in two ways. The first is the inherent risk, assuming no controls are in place. This is useful to know because it determines how strong the controls need to be. The higher the risk, the stronger the control. Then the control details are provided, and a residual risk is calculated to show the current risk that is being experienced.
So, guys, I just want to talk about this risk register. Very important. Just as I'm watching it, things are just drop into my, like tell them this. So yeah, you can see on the register as it implies, it looks like an Excel sheet here, which it is. Now you can see the risk ID, the risk approval status, the risk name. I know our instructor is actually speaking on it, which is going to say a lot of things about it, but I want you to pay attention to the details that you can see on it. Things like the risk ID, the risk name, the enterprise risk category, the risk owner, the consequence criteria, those tabs that were actually highlighted. I mean, every of these detail is essential, but I'm just saying pay attention to certain things. Also, the risk approval, everything around it here is actually very important, to be honest. Yeah, and also you can see we have the impact, how likely or what likelihood is for this risk to happen under the likelihood, the control name, of course, the control description, the control owner, things like this. Very important register. And this is something that, as an SOC analyst, as a cybersecurity professional, you will definitely come in contact with one of these documents at some point in time in your career. So you want to be able to look at this register and identify certain things. Just by looking at it, you're able to understand, okay, what is this document all about? What am I supposed to identify in this document? What are the key concepts to take, on, or to focus on this document? What am I supposed to pay more attention to the critical, functioning of my present organization to keep their business, running. So I mean, these are things that are very related to, disaster recovery, planning, and then business continuity planning as well. But like I said, our instructor is still speaking on it, so I'm just going to let him continue, and then I just have that notes. I just had that instinct actually to speak.
By the business. Take a few minutes to set up your own spreadsheet risk register, as we've just discussed, and add an entry, malware infection. Think about your own situation. What could be the root cause, the consequence, and the inherent risk level? What controls do you have in place? And what is the residual level of risk?
So I hope we all did that. I hope we all did that. It's very important. So make sure as we are watching, we are also thinking critically. Okay, what type of risk? Our first topic was threats, and looked at various types of threats, even though we understood very, categorically the key logger that logs keystrokes. Yeah, So imagine that type of threat. What is the risk? How do you think you can avoid things like that? You have to start beginning to think critically, like a cybersecurity professional that you will be in after this bootcamp.
Risks can be shown as bubbles on what's known as a risk heat map, where individual risks are charted in the cell which exists at the intersection of the likelihood row and the impact column. This is sometimes called a risk bubble chart. A typical approach to managing risks is to accept any very low risks which appear in the green area. Low risks, shown in the gold area, are accepted but monitored to ensure they don't increase. Medium risks in the yellow area are scheduled for routine remediation work. And high and very high risks are shown together here in the red area and require immediate remediation. This form of risk chart is very common, and it provides a succinct way to present a high-level picture of the risks. Sometimes the bubble chart is enhanced to show the planned progress of mitigations, using an arrow and a bubble to identify the final expected risk level after mitigation. This is a powerful way to show the work being done to reduce risk. The term risk context refers to the risk bubble chart and the tables used to determine likelihood and impact. Here we can see the tables representing the 5 levels of likelihood, which make up the vertical axis on the heat map, and the multiple tables representing different perspectives on impact, which together make up the horizontal axis. These tables are typically developed specifically for the business by their risk officer. The risk context should also include guidance on the actions required to be taken at each risk level, reflecting more urgent action and more intense oversight at the higher levels of business risk. NIST in December 2018 issued revision 2 to their original Special Publication on Risk, SP 837, Risk Management Framework. The Risk Management Framework provides a disciplined, structured and flexible process for managing security and privacy risk. It covers information security categorization, control selection, implementation and assessment, system and common control authorizations, and continuous monitoring of risks. The Risk Management Framework considers risk at 3 levels: information systems risk, mission or business process risk, and whole of business risk. The risk management process involves preparation of the necessary risk material needed to carry out risk management, and then a 6-stage process of categorization, selection, implementation, assessment, authorization, and monitoring. The prepare stage of the framework involves 7 actions, 3 of which are risk-related and 4 controls-related. They are: assign people to risk management roles, prepare the risk management context, also known as the risk strategy, complete an organization-wide risk assessment, establish control baselines according to the standards relevant to the organization, identify common controls, and prioritize them according to the potential impact of an attack, and develop the plan for monitoring control effectiveness. The categorize phase overlaps somewhat with the prepare phase, as it requires a full review of the IT systems in use, particularly identifying the system characteristics and the information they process and store. The next step is to determine the impact levels to confidentiality, availability, and integrity. And the final step is to get business endorsement or authorization of the 3 impact classification levels. The select stage requires that controls are selected and tailored to the specific system environment to mitigate all risks to the system that are beyond risk appetite. This is judged by determining the risk level and then identifying from the risk context whether controls are required. The steps in the select stage are control selection, either by adopting a baseline set of controls, by a custom set of controls driven by the risk assessments, or by a combination of both. controlled tailoring to suit the operating environment, control allocation to systems, ensuring that the specific business requirements for security in that system are met across people, process, and technology. Documenting the controls for each system in a system security plan. Developing and implementing the approach to continuous monitoring of control effectiveness. And gain business approval of the system security plans and continuous monitoring process. The next stage is to implement the controls that have been identified for the system and maintain the system security plans accordingly. The assess stage is about through-life assessment of the system to ensure that controls are effective and there is no evidence of a breach. There are 7 steps in this stage of the risk management life cycle. Assessor selection, based on candidate qualifications and target knowledge. Develop the plan for the assessment and carry out the assessment plan for the controls. Report on the control effectiveness, providing findings and recommendations. Remediate any findings that can be immediately rectified, and develop an overall plan of action for findings that can't be immediately rectified. The purpose of the authorized stage is to provide organizational accountability by requiring a senior manager to determine if the security and privacy risk represented by the overall set of risk management activities and plans is acceptable. This stage has 5 steps for developing the submission, management review, additional risk management response to any issues raised, approval decisions for each system, and an authorization report. The final stage is monitoring. This is a key stage of the framework which provides the ongoing situational awareness about the security and privacy posture of the information system and the organization in support of risk management decisions, and includes some of the above stages. It has 7 steps. The systems and environment are monitored for any changes that might occur. In-flight assessments are performed as required. Any issues identified are responded to. Risk management documents are maintained, and security and privacy risks are reported regularly. Authorizations are given to systems as required, and systems are securely disposed of when no longer required.
That was a very interesting, in-depth look into advanced risk assessment analysis. So we are also going to be introduced to another framework, which is known as the COBIT framework. Let's keep learning. I hope we really are finding this interesting, and we are, of course, understand what's being discussed. You have your questions in our earlier video. I already earlier stream. I put out my email out there. Um, I'll also get it, on my. So just for um your information, everyone. So I stream live on X. I stream live on Telegram. I also stream live on YouTube. So these are our 3 major platforms. So my X platform, of course, you're all familiar with. There's also an X handle that you can follow for our community, which is the Cyber VG University community, which is the same um, name you find on um, X, on YouTube, and on Telegram as well. So our Telegram stream, of course, once you stream on Telegram, you're not able to put those, except you're recording. And why would you do that? Since we already have streams being saved on the X, so on the timeline on my personal page timeline, you'll definitely find recordings. And these aren't the first recordings. I mean, although this bootcamp, of course, is um, it's a it's a it's a new concept, where we're using the LinkedIn learning platform. Other recordings that has happened has just been a direct, um, And of course, I told us the reason why I'm bringing up this initiative because, of course, you know, what we already need to do is, is already being done by LinkedIn Learning Platform. Like I told you, a lot of professionals come on here to upskill themselves. So why not we come learn together whatever concepts you do understand, explain them to you. Like I told you as well, I've taken a lot of courses, a lot of certifications from LinkedIn Learning Platform. It's very helpful, it's very useful. Most of the certifications that you want to write or that you need as an IT professional, security plus, the cybersecurity, SOC analyst, Cisco, ISC, ISC2. Most of their certifications, they have their trainings here on LinkedIn. So, and on LinkedIn Learning, and every of those, if you really are ready to get serious with your cybersecurity journey, of course, we can study them here together. I'll add up more in-depth analysis, more in-depth explanations into what I'm being discussed. Because of course, like I told you, most of these courses are already taken there. And I have the certifications. At some point, I had loads of LinkedIn certifications on my LinkedIn profile, but then they were not really getting me the jobs because I felt like people or these companies, what they look out for is industry certifications. I mean, when I talk about industry, I mean like CompTIA, like AC Council, like Cisco, like they want their industry certifications. Okay, so not a learning platform certification. Not to say these learning platform certifications are not useful. They show your commitment to learning. So aside just you coming, of course, to watch Cyber Vigil University, to watch iMedia Way, if you have a LinkedIn learning platform, you can also study personally with these platforms to upskill yourself. Of course, like I told you, the essence of this is to make it more enhanced. Right now, on the learning platform, you're not going to have the instructor pause the way I pause to explain some concept or to give some real life scenarios into some certain illustrations or something concept that we learn. That's what we find here, right? That's the enhancement that you find while we study together because you already have someone who has done these courses ahead, understand them, even has been able to relate them to real life experience and been able to relate them to work experience and then can help you understand them better. That's the difference. That's why I'm here. And now I feel like a boss. Example boss. Hi guys. Let's get back to it.
One of the more important IT frameworks for the enterprise is COBIT, the Control Objectives for IT. COBIT is published by the Information Systems Audit and Control Association, ISACA, and its purpose is to ensure that enterprises have in place an effective and auditable set of governance and management processes for IT, which deliver value for its stakeholders. COBIT is designed around a set of processes. These are grouped into the four areas of plan, build, deliver, and monitor. We can see at the top left the plan group, known in full as Align, Plan and Organise, with its 14 APO processes. Below that is the Build, Acquire and Implement group. It has 11 processes. At the bottom of the diagram are the 6 processes in the Deliver, Service and Support group. And to the right is the Monitor, Evaluate and Assess group with its 4 processes. The COBIT framework is used by the financial sector for carrying out IT general controls, external audits. Consequently, having a COBIT-aligned security framework is the first step in putting in place an IT environment which will meet regulatory obligations. From a cybersecurity perspective, there are 2 key processes for security. APO 13, Manage Security, in the Plan group, and DSSO 5, Manage Security Services, in the Deliver group. Of course, there are many other processes in which security plays a part. For example, Security incident management is an important activity, but this falls within the overall IT process of DSSO2, Managed Service Requests and Incidents. Let's take a look into APO 13, Managed Security, which defines the requirement for security management. The process description is define, operate, and monitor a system for information security management. And it has 5 goals: support IT and business compliance, support the management of IT and enterprise risk, contribute to the transparency of IT costs and benefits, ensure the security of information, infrastructure, and applications, and provide reliable information for decision making. APO 13 consists of 3 control objectives. APO 13.01 establish and maintain an enterprise information security management system. APO 13.02 define and manage a security plan, which establishes a set of objectives to progress towards the desired security posture. And APO 13.03 monitor and review the ISMS. The Enterprise Information Security Management System, or ISMS, defines the approach taken to ensuring information security is effective, and this is often aligned to the set of requirements outlined in the international standard ISO 27001 Information Security Management Systems requirements. While APO 1301 is a single control objective, to satisfy it involves putting in place a number of lower level controls from the ISO 27000 series of standards. Let's look now at the second security-focused process, DSSO5, Managed Security Services. The description of this process is to protect enterprise information.
Alright, guys, so when we talk about things like or concept like operational security, so what we're looking at is things that keeps the operations running. Yeah. So of course um, we have industrial technology. We also have operational technology. Yeah. So for instance, when we talk about industrial technology, we have things like, let's say, um, um, uh, pipelines, air conditioning systems, electricity grids. These are like industrial technology that makes these things functions. They are like industrial technology. Operational technology as well is also like very similar to the industrial technology. I'm trying not to actually confuse the two concepts, but what I'm trying to bring out is when we talk about operational security, we're talking about things that keeps you security operations running. Like, again, that instinct to just say, just give you guys this.
To maintain the level of information security risk acceptable to the enterprise in accordance with the security policy. Establish and maintain information security roles and access privileges, and perform security monitoring. Essentially, DSSO5 defines the requirements of operational security. DSSO5 provides operational processes to satisfy 3 of the 5 APO 13 goals: support IT and business compliance, support the management of IT and enterprise risk, and ensure the security of information, infrastructure, and applications. There are 7 operational security control objectives in DSSO5, which provide the foundation for a defensive cybersecurity program. Let's take a look at what's in each of them. The first control objective is protect against malware. Malware is one of the main challenges in cybersecurity today, and protecting against it involves a number of activities and controls. These include antivirus, security patching, security information awareness, and in contemporary terms, cyber threat intelligence. Change management, security filtering of email and web traffic, and security training. The second control objective is managed network and connectivity security. This includes establishing and enforcing policy on network connections, enforcement of password entry, the configuration and use of firewalls and intrusion detection systems, network security protocols and communications encryption, network configuration, security mechanisms to ensure trusted transmission and receipt, network security control testing and penetration testing. A critical control for this objective is network.
Okay, guys, so I just want us to understand this concept of managing network and connectivity security. This was what I was talking about when I talked about, you know, understanding how infrastructures or computer systems communicate. We can see right here we are beginning to get into some topics like network configuration and segregation, security mechanisms to ensure trusted transmission and receipt, network security control and penetration testing. All these are just border security or things that has to do with ensuring proper security configurations. Yeah. Now, why are these important? Because of course, for systems to communicate, they need to be on the same network. They could be on different networks, and of course, they communicate through of the protocol of the TCP/IP, yeah, which is the IP address that helps us in communication and things like that. And while they are communicating, certain proper configurations needs to be in place to ensure that they are not susceptible to attacks like man in the middle where an attacker is probably sniffing through the networks. And even if such is occurring, we should have some certain detection mechanisms that helps us to detect such types of attacks. That is why this is actually important, and of course we're understanding that under the operational security. That's my point. Operational security.
Network segregation. Manage endpoint security covers the security of laptops, desktops, servers, mobile devices, and network equipment. It requires that controls.
I know you didn't ask, but of course, when we talk about endpoints, that's what we actually mean. The laptops and endpoints, the desktop is an endpoint, your mobile phones are endpoints. Why are these endpoints? Because of course, whatever traffic that happens, or whatever communication that happens, these are where they end. Sometimes, if there's a term like start point, that would have been also ascribed to your phones, your mobiles, or not just your system being an endpoint, but even this stop right now. This is the endpoint.
Are put in place to ensure the endpoints are securely configured, hardened to remove unnecessary ports and protocols, and that remote access is managed. The next control objective is manage user identity and logical access. Identity and access management is a very complex issue, and this one control objective can easily consume half the effort in a mature cybersecurity program. It's also the area which generates a good proportion of all audit findings, so it pays to keep a tight focus on it. This process requires that identities are managed from creation to removal. Access rights are established and maintained in line with the roles and responsibilities of the organisation. That access to systems and information is authorised and authenticated. That privileged access is strictly controlled. And that access rights are regularly reviewed. And that appropriate audit trails of access are kept. The fifth of these control objectives covers the management of physical access to IT assets. This includes perimeter protection, such as fences, doors and locks, intruder detection systems, access controls for data centers and office spaces, identity cards and visitor management procedures. Increasingly, the use of cloud-based infrastructure is reducing the effort required to manage this area, but increasing the dependence on and the oversight of third-party security. Managing sensitive documents is an increasingly important aspect of security, as the focus of protective measures shrinks from the perimeter to the information itself. With employees taking laptops out of the enterprise and sending data out to mobile devices, perimeter security devices such as corporate firewalls no longer protect enterprise information. New techniques such as digital rights management and mobile email encryption need to be employed. This process also includes information and device centric controls, such as passwords or PIN controlled printing and PIN codes on mobile devices. Finally, monitor the infrastructure for security related events provides the detective controls which are needed to identify security breaches should the enterprise's preventative controls fail. This control objective includes the operation of intrusion detection and prevention systems, logging and alerting security related events, operating log management and security information and event monitoring systems, delivering security incidents to the incident management process, carrying out forensics, and managing evidence. These are all key activities for a cybersecurity operations center. The term cybersecurity means to protect things in cyberspace from attack, and we do this by using security controls. When designing our controls, we need to make sure they're fit for purpose. Firstly, we need to check whether the cost of the control is more or less than the loss associated with the impact of the attack. We often see a curve graph to explain this, where we plot the cost of an increasingly powerful control against the benefit it provides. Where the benefit in additional risk reduction outweighs the cost of achieving it, we don't proceed with any further control. Secondly, we need to consider how effective the control is against the threat. The result of assessing the risk based on the likelihood and impact of a threat is known as the inherent risk. When controls are implemented, there'll usually be an acceptably small level of risk remaining, which is known as the residual risk. We can apply what's known as a multi-tiered or defense-in-depth control strategy to mitigate cyber risks. There are four key types of controls that can be.
Right, so a very important concept was made, um, the instructor made mention of was the defense in depth control mechanism or security mechanism. Now, when we talk about defense in depth, so we're looking at an in depth mechanism that we incorporate into defending or as an act of defense for our IT infrastructures. Now, this happens from the kernel. It starts from the kernel up onto the hardware, up onto the network. Rather, before the network, the operating system that sits on the hardware. Of course, the hardware has a kernel. From the operating system to software, which is the applications that sit on that, and then down to humans, we people. So these are of course, at definitely I want to believe at some point in this training we are going to get to, where we'll have a physical view of what a defense in depth. But usually it's usually an illustration where you see, the different layers, the different defense layers of what I just made mention of, starting from of course the data itself, of course, data sitting in a kernel or sitting in, of course, on an hardware. The hardware, of course, carries the operating system. The operating system, of course, carries applications. The application travels through network, and of course, things like that towards going to the web. So at every of those layers, we apply defense. Physically, we protect the hardware, your operating system, you patch your operating system, your softwares, you make sure that they are written, using, of course, proper safe codes. Your internet, you employ things like firewall, like we've discussed or we've understood. Things like I'm just citing examples just for us to understand what a defense in-depth technology mechanism, means.
Be applied, and it's generally recommended that two or more are used together. The first is deterrent controls. These reduce the threat. An example of this is incarceration, which deters would-be criminals from carrying out their attacks. Preventative controls are designed to stop the attack from succeeding by not allowing it to get at an asset to exploit a vulnerability. A firewall is one such preventative control, blocking protocols that might be used as attack vectors. Detective controls are used to detect that an attack has taken place. A burglar alarm is a typical detective control. And finally, corrective controls are used to reduce the impact of an incident, and a good example of this is recovery from data backups. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework presents corrective as the respond and recover functional controls. Let's look at an example. In order to protect data from unauthorized modification, we firstly apply access controls to ensure that anyone trying to access the data has been authorized. In case this fails, we then monitor for any data changes. If data is changed maliciously, we can recover it by restoring from backup. While controls can be applied by an enterprise as a customized response to business risks, in many cases an external authority will direct that a predefined set of controls be adopted as a baseline for security. An example of government policy is SP 853, Security and Privacy Controls for Federal Information Systems and Organizations, which federal organizations are required to adopt. An authority may be an industry body, such as the Payment Card Industry Council, which requires that merchants adhere to the payment card industry data security standard. NIST's SP 853 is one of two important control frameworks used in cybersecurity, the other being ISO 27002. They're both structured as a set of control categories. Within each exists a number of specific controls. While the categories and the controls are different for each standard, they can be mapped against each other. These two control frameworks are widely referenced by other security schemes, in particular the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. The controls in ISO 27002 are described in a three-tier hierarchy of security category, security control objective, and control. Let's have a look at an example. Here we can see access control is the main category. Operating system access control is the control objective, and user identification and authentication is the control. The NIST SP 853 controls are described in a two-tier hierarchy. In this example, identity and authentication is the control family, and identity and authentication organizational users is the control. The description is very similar to the description of the ISO 11.5.2 control. An important first stage in implementing a control framework is to create what's known as a statement of applicability. The statement of applicability is the main link between the risk assessment and the selection of controls, and its purpose is to provide evidence that all controls have been considered. The controls that aren't applicable won't be implemented, and the rationale for omitting them is recorded in the statement of applicability. Developing a clear statement of applicability is a good way to reduce the effort required to meet and maintain a compliant and effective security posture. There are a number of specific considerations around controls. Common controls can be inherited by one or more systems, reducing both deployment and ongoing operational effort and cost. Where specific controls are called for, but are either not yet present or can't be implemented, then compensating controls will be required, such as sample checks of manual authorizations in the absence of an electronic authorization process. Once a control has been implemented, it needs regular testing, and this should be a routine part of any compliance program. Control testing involves two stages: testing design effectiveness and testing operational effectiveness. Design effectiveness is checked by verifying that the control as implemented meets the original design requirements. For example, to carry out a design test of control ISO 11.5.2 user identification and authentication would involve verifying configuration files to confirm that access to the system requires entry of a user identifier, and that a password or some other form of authentication is required prior to allowing access into the system. Operational effectiveness involves testing the system and making sure that the control is continuing to be effective against attack. For example, a penetration tester might attempt an SQL injection on the user identifier field in a logon form to see whether access can be gained without entering valid credentials. There are a number of industry standards of good practice which provide guidance on cybersecurity. The most well-known is the ISF Standard of Good Practice. It's essentially a risk and control framework for managing cybersecurity. The Standard of Good Practice is consistent with the major recognized information security standards, such as ISO 27002, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, COBIT, and PCI DSS control standards. It also aligns with the controls required to satisfy Europe's General Data Privacy Regulations. It incorporates the ISF Risk Assessment Methodology, or IRAM, which presents a risk management scheme with the three phases of business impact assessment, threat and vulnerability assessment, and control selection. Let's have a look at what the ISF controls look like. The ISF Standard of Good Practice structures its controls into categories, areas, and topics. Let's have a look at the Security Monitoring and Improvement category. It has 2 areas and 8 topics. The 2 areas are Security Audit, with its 5 topics, and Security Improvement, with its 3. If we dig down into Security Monitoring, topic S12.1, it has a principle. The information security condition of the organisation should be monitored regularly and reported to executive management, and an objective to provide the executive management with an accurate, comprehensive and coherent assessment of the information security condition of the organisation. The Standard of Good Practice is a comprehensive industry approach to security, but only available to members of the Information Security Forum. The Central Bank of the Netherlands, DNB, has published a cybersecurity standard of good practice as guidance for the financial sector. This is freely available from their website. As we can see, it takes a risk and testing perspective on controls. The standard is structured into categories, with each having one or more controls. There are almost 60 controls detailed in the standard across these categories. The standard contains a maturity model in support of the process category. Here we see 5 levels of maturity, starting with initial and progressing through repeatable, defined, managed and measured, to continuous improvement.
Okay, so we can see this framework or this standard that, of course, we can see, or it's been told to us that certain banking industries follow, and I want to believe back in Africa, we have our own standards as well that are being followed. But you can see these are, standards, guidelines, policies. These are the things that guides, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. These are the things that guides the use or the or that that forms the best practice and use of um, computer systems, IT infrastructures.
Each level builds on the previous ones and adds more rigour to the process at each step. Here we see one of the controls. This is the DNB Standard of Good Practice guidance on security and monitoring. The DNB standard isn't as well known as the ISF standard, but it is free and it contains a lot of valuable guidance.
So I'm just going to advice, we also take a look at this PDF, look at it, part of the advice or part of the guidance that is contained in this framework is, or this standard this document is, of course, security testing, surveillance, and monitoring. And when you talk about security testing, we're looking at testing every aspect of the configurations of your computer systems. Surveillance and monitoring, you also monitor certain, for instance, we looked at risk. You identify a risk, you develop risk plan, and you also monitor this risk plan to ensure that you are up, you know you are standing um, at a safe, position, to ensure that in the case of any event, you are able to, you know have your business continuity plan up and running, things like that. So I think that brings us to the end of this second session. So we'll have the tests, quiz up next. Yeah, and you know how we do it. You send your answers, of course, to ayo 99ine at carefulwatchers .net. Ayo 99 at carefulwatchers.net. So the first question here is, the first question here says, what is the step in creating a cybersecurity control? So what is the step in creating a cybersecurity control, guys? Our second question here is, when implementing a control framework, what is an important first step? So when you're implementing um, a control framework, what is an important first step? Our next question, guys. Which key concept in information security does the Orange Book refer to as a subsystem containing all the security code? Which key concept in information security does the Orange Book refer to as a subsystem containing all the security code? Our next question, what does the NIST cybersecurity framework do? What does the NIST cybersecurity framework do? Next question, guys. What maturity level would be given to an organization where risk management is mandated? What maturity level would be given to an organization where risk management is mandated? Next question, guys. What is the purpose of the ISF standard of good practice? What is the purpose of the ISF standard of good practice? Next question, guys. Which resource would you least likely use when determining security risk? Which resource would you least likely use when determining a security risk? Um, so, which resource would you likely use when determining a security risk? So, our next question, Leonard wants some insight into who the cyber attackers are and how they carry out their attacks. Which resource is most useful for this information? Leonard wants some insight into who the cyber attackers are and how they carry out their attacks. Which resource is most useful for this information? And second to the last question, um, this person is using a risk bubble chart to manage her company's risks. She has several risks in a gold area. What does this indicate? So we saw the bubble chart here. So what does this indicate? So in case you are having any challenge answering whatever question, you can always roll back. Of course, not on the live stream while you're watching the stream. If that's when you decide to answer your questions, and then send them in the mail, and then get to understand before answering. So COBIT is designed around a set of processes. What are the four areas in which these processes reside? That's the COBIT framework. We looked at that. Okay, guys, let's see how I did. So I got 9 out of 10 correctly. Missed one. Shouldn't have missed it, but I did. Okay, so let's keep going. Um, Here we are.
The secure or not secure in isolation. Security doesn't exist in isolation. It's a characteristic of a business service, a business system, and business information. All of these are either secure or not secure. Although in reality security isn't black and white, it most definitely comes in shades of grey. Nevertheless, organisations will often adopt a set of controls to secure their IT systems and not consider whether or not these reflect any of the requirements of the business. Rather than just adopt a generic control set, we can use what's known as enterprise security architecture to architect a security solution which meets the needs of our business, and then apply the controls that are necessary to achieve that architecture. One of the most popular enterprise security architecture frameworks is SABSA, the Sherwood Applied Business Security Architecture. SABSA is used to capture business requirements and then determine what security is needed to meet those requirements. The basic construct in SABSA is its architecture matrix. The two top layers, the contextual and conceptual, contain the elements of the architecture necessary in the strategy and planning stage, while the three lower layers, the logical, physical, and component, contain those necessary to design secure IT systems and processes to support the higher level business goals and objectives. This matrix is used to capture all relevant security concepts and activities for the enterprise, and these are shown in summary in the cells. Security is often defined in terms of the information assurance we achieve by considering a system's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This approach came from early work on models of security, and while it's a very common approach, it's also a very constricting and artificial paradigm. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability are indeed three attributes, but they're not the only ones. We can add more, such as non-repudiation, authenticity, utility. But to create an effective information security architecture that's business-centric, rather than security-centric, this is still inadequate. The SABSA framework provides a comprehensive set of business security attributes which have been collected from hundreds of consultancy projects, and most, if not all, attributes that an organisation needs to define their own concept of security can be found here. SABSA's many attributes are grouped into 7 categories in what's called an attribute taxonomy: user, management, operational, risk, technical, legal, and business. These categories represent the focus of the business outcome which is being protected by the attribute. This is, in effect, a picture of what business success looks like. This set of attributes are often used as a pick list from which to choose a relevant subset of attributes for an architecture project, and they're quite useful as a cross-check on the attributes derived from the business. We can show the attributes in a business-relevant form. Here we show the attributes representing activities which are important to the military: preparation of the force, intelligence regarding the battlefield, the characteristics of operations, commanding and sustaining the force, and providing protection of the force. When we architect security, we start with business goals and objectives. Here's a strategic business construct showing goals and objectives. The smaller ellipses together represent the objectives which are required to meet the goals in the larger ellipses. We can analyse the objectives to determine what we need in terms of security attributes to ensure the objectives are met. In this table, we can see some general business objectives. We call these business drivers, which map to a number of the individual enterprise technology and business division objectives. For each of these, we can describe the business driver as a set of security-focused attributes. We can then use these attributes to measure security across the organization, and we can map them down to the information systems which support the various business processes. By measuring the effect of a security incident on an attribute, we can map this easily back to the business goals and objectives which depend upon it. There's much more to SABSA and enterprise security architecture in general, but the main takeaway is that we need to always look at security through business eyes, because security is what we need to achieve business success.
All right, so guys, I've been mute for like how many minutes now, and not like I felt bad, but I just felt like okay, let's listen to our instructor and just have some understanding on the concept that have been discussed to us. So that was really very interesting, and I think the next topic we're going to be discussing right now is on cloud, so which is something that is also very interesting, another aspect of security. So, but yeah, that was a really good one on different um, standards that guides, especially payment card, which is the PCI DSS, and of course we see how they organize their control mechanisms to ensure that they don't, they don't organizations that has to do with sensitive information such as credit card don't fall prey to attackers stealing people's credentials. Okay, so that being said, let's get ahead and continue with what we have to do.
Cloud technology is no longer a novel approach to deploying infrastructure, but is a mainstream option for enterprises. Cloud security solutions may be deployed by the enterprise IT team, or solutions may be deployed by business groups. There are three forms of cloud deployment in common use: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. However, there are many more specialist forms of cloud service that can be used. In all cases, there's a need for security controls to be used to protect the cloud solution, just as there is for an open-premise solution. However, there are some differences in the controls when using them for cloud, and there are some new controls that need to be considered. The International Standards Organization has produced an ISO 27000 standard for cloud, known as ISO 27017. This is based on ISO 27002 and includes an additional 6 controls. NIST has produced the SP 800-144 Guidelines on Security and Privacy in Public Cloud Computing, which refers back to the SP 853 controls. However, the main reference for cloud security is the Cloud Security Alliance Security Guidance for Critical Areas of Focus in Cloud Computing, with its 14 areas of controls. These domains provide a full description of cloud, its security needs, and the controls needed to protect cloud deployments. The guidance is supported by a cloud controls matrix, which can be downloaded from the CSA site shown here. The Cloud Controls Matrix provides the fundamental security principles that should be adopted by cloud vendors, and that can assist cloud customers in assessing the overall security risk of a cloud provider. It provides clarity on the shared responsibilities between the cloud service provider and customer according to the form of cloud. More importantly, it provides a controls framework cross reference to the other major security standards recognized in industry. Version 3.0.1 of the CCM has 133 controls in 16 domains. The 16 domains can be seen here. They don't align with the domains in the security guidance for critical areas of focus in cloud computing, but they do provide a comprehensive coverage of security across cloud, starting with application and interface security and finishing with threat and vulnerability management. However, the main reference for cloud security is the Cloud Security Alliance Security Guidance for Critical Areas of Focus in Cloud Computing, with its 14 areas of controls. The Internet of Things is a term which means everything that's connected to the Internet that isn't a standard laptop, workstation, or server. One dictionary definition of the Internet of Things is the interconnection via the Internet of computing devices embedded in everyday objects, enabling them to send and receive data. Wikipedia goes a little deeper and defines the Internet of Things as a system of interrelated computing devices, mechanical and digital machines, objects, animals, or people that are provided with unique identifiers and the ability to transfer data over a network without requiring human to human or human to computer interaction. An obvious characteristic of the Internet of Things is that it's connected to the Internet. It may only send data, it may only receive data, or it may do both. An important class of Internet things are the low power things, those objects which have an embedded battery and no external power supply. These are often required to have a life of 10 years or longer, and so require very low power operation. One of the first organizations to provide guidance on security for the Internet of Things was the IoT Alliance Australia, a part of the Australian Communications Alliance. Its initial Internet of Things Security Guideline was published in February 2017 and provides an introduction to IoT technology and the key IoT industry sectors. It covers legal, privacy, security, resilience, and survivability issues, as well as IoT device development considerations. There is no definitive set of security controls for IoT, although organizations such as OWASP and GSMA have provided some guidance. The IoT Security Foundation has published a comprehensive set of 142 controls in their security guideline, which are grouped into 13 areas of compliance. Take a moment to think about the challenges in providing guidance for IoT. A small sensor may have little memory and a very low power processor, but an industrial SCADA device may be as powerful as a modern PC. Think about an IoT soil moisture sensor, which is deployed out in the field and has to run on its own internal battery for no less than 10 years. Jot down 2 reasons why you wouldn't want it to have to run antivirus software.
Okay, so on IoTs, guys, we all know, um, I mean, some of us even have these IoTs in our houses. Maybe our fridges are connected to devices, maybe some of our webcams, maybe like our instructor gave us an example, a soil sensor, things like these that run on IoTs. Now, why do you think you might want to secure these IoTs? Like I told us, we need to start thinking critically as cybersecurity professionals. Of course, we are not yet, um, we are still getting to understand this concept, but of course, you need to start thinking and we saw the questions, why do we want to keep this away from the internet? Why might we want to have these connected via a firewall or maybe installing an antivirus, into preventing certain malware or compromise into our systems. Why do you think this might be, or why that should actually be?
An interesting additional attribute that the IoT Security Foundation has tagged to each control is its compliance class, which can be one of five values relating to the data generated or the level of control provided by the device. The control is then relevant to the IoT device if its compliance class is equal or higher to the control tag. Class 0 means that the compromise is likely to result in little discernible impact on an individual or organization. Class 1 means that the compromise would likely have limited impact on an individual or organization. Class 2 devices are those designed to resist attacks on availability that would have a significant impact on individuals or an organization. Class 3 devices, additionally, are designed to protect sensitive data. And Class 4 devices are those which have the potential to affect critical infrastructure or cause personal injury. We're likely to see much more attention being given to IoT security controls as we see deployments into key sectors such as intelligent transport and smart cities. While we may design and implement security into our systems, this doesn't mean that it's effective. In fact, most breaches occur on solutions which have been supposedly secured using good industry practices. The reason for the security failures vary. Some breaches occur because of poor design or implementation. Some occur because of poor security hygiene in the business. And some because new exploits have been found which enable an attacker to circumvent security. Assurance is a process which starts prior to the launch of a system and then continues through life. There are a variety of basic assurance methods that are used by organizations to check their systems. The key ones are vulnerability scans, which identify the services which can be accessed and check that they have all known patches applied. Security control audits, which predefine a set of conditions based on the control and predict the expected results. And penetration tests, which use known exploits and exploit techniques to try to circumvent the security control. In addition to their own testing, organizations may contract out independent evaluation of their systems. This is typically done to provide some form of certification that the system can be trusted by its users. Many organizations now gain certification against ISO 27000 for the whole business to demonstrate that their processes covering design, implementation, and operation of systems are secure. Vendors may submit their products for evaluation in accordance with what's known as the Common Criteria Scheme. This provides an independent view of product assurance, from a basic statement of document compliance to an increasingly rigorous level of evaluation. The Common Criteria Scheme is recognised by many countries and is the main scheme used for product assurance. However, some governments have begun to question the efficacy of evaluations of overseas products, even when they're done locally. The original 5 members of the Common Criteria Group were the US, the UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. New Zealand and the United Kingdom are no longer authorising countries. Assurance isn't a perfect answer. Certified organisations do get breached and evaluated products do get exploited. However, carrying out assurance testing raises the bar substantially and avoids organisations falling victim to simple attacks. With the move to automated assurance testing, that bar is raised even further as the vagaries of the human element are removed from the testing process.
Great time. It's time for our quiz again. Yeah, in this session we have 4 questions, and the first one is asking us which framework should we use to align business uh, and security requirements. So I know that we are by now already understanding cybersecurity. And anyways, guys, you know how we do the quiz. You send the questions, you send the answers to my email. So the second question is, what is considered the main reference for cloud security? So what is considered the main reference for cloud security? So we have our third question. The IoT Security Foundation has provided compliance classes to an IoT device. Which class is given to a device with limited impact on an individual? Is it class 0, class 1, class 2, or class 3? We just looked at this now. And then I think our final question for this session: which assurance method is used to exploit around security controls? So, guys, which assurance method is being used to exploit around security controls? Okay, so let's see how I did. Um, Answered four questions correctly. Let's continue to the next topic. So, guys, now we're on to the next topic, which is detecting and managing cyber incidents. So, we just finished the making cybersecurity effective topic. And we're moving on to the next topic right now, which is second to the last topic for this session. So let's dive in straight away.
With the resources being invested in both cybercrime and state sponsored malware, it's inevitable that an attack will eventually penetrate even the most careful organisation. When that happens, the difference between inconvenience and disaster will be how well prepared the organisation is to respond to the incident. NIST's cybersecurity framework provides a set of control objectives under the functional area Respond. This consists of 5 categories: planning, communicate, analysis, mitigation, and improvements. The framework also includes a recovery function, which adds to 3 of the Respond categories. The 5 cybersecurity framework categories align closely with the 4-stage incident handling process defined in the NIST special publication SP 861 Incident Handling Guide. Unlike the cybersecurity framework, the communications which occur throughout these 4 stages is not shown as a separate stage. The cybersecurity framework and the SP 861 can also be aligned to the 3-stage model published by Crest UK, with its model of prepare, respond, and follow up. Whatever the model, a key aspect of incident management is information sharing. This includes threat intelligence in the preparation stage and operational response matters during an incident. NIST established the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, FIRST, in 1990, and this continues today as an active forum helping support the industry, government, and vendor communities. FIRST runs workshops and conferences to foster cooperation and coordination in incident prevention, to stimulate rapid reaction to incidents, and where subject matter experts can meet to share information. The community of Computer Incident Response Teams, or CIRTs, operate at a national level to protect the government and its critical infrastructure, and to provide community advice on cybersecurity matters. The US CIRT, for example, is part of the Department of Homeland Security. Through its 24/7 Operations Center, US CIRT accepts, triages and collaborates on incidents, provides technical assistance, and disseminates notifications of current and potential security issues. CIRTs also collaborate at the international level through the Forum of Incident Response Teams. This involves not only maintaining national CIRT-to-CIRT channels, running training courses, and participating in annual conferences, but also being the main contact for CIRTs to organisations such as the Global Forum of Security Experts and the International Telecommunications Union. It's useful to have a common language when talking about types of incidents, and having a set of generic templates which are fit for purpose for each. US CIRT defines 7 categories of incidents. Category 0 covers incidents that are part of cyber exercises for testing the network defences. Category 1 incidents are those where an individual gains logical or physical access without permission to a network system, application, data, or other resource. Category 2 incidents are denial of service events, where the attack successfully prevents or impairs the normal authorized functionality of a network, system, or application by exhausting resources. Category 3 covers the successful installation of malicious software not quarantined by antivirus software. Category 4 incidents are those involving a breach of acceptable use. Category 5 incidents are scans and probes of a system looking for open ports, protocols, or services which don't directly result in a compromise or denial of service. Category 6 is for incidents involving unconfirmed but potentially malicious activity, which justifies further investigation. Incidents don't often appear in a way which is immediately obvious for categorization. We'll usually have some form of event that is flagged as suspicious, and some investigation is needed. An important tool for incident management is the trouble ticket system, which enables us to maintain all relevant information on an event through to it becoming an incident and eventually being resolved. Here's an example of a trouble ticket system called OS Ticket, displaying its list of open tickets. The effort put into preparing for an incident will be paid back many times over through a timely and effective response which contains the damage. Preparation involves establishing and training an incident response team, establishing and exercising processes, and acquiring the necessary tools and resources. Once a basic program is up and running, it's useful to carry out a baseline survey of incident response preparedness. Crest UK has developed an incident response maturity assessment tool, which is free to download and use. This is a spreadsheet-based tool which contains over 600 questions across the 3 stages of incident management, and it can be used to assess an organisation's readiness to respond to a cyber attack. A summary version of the tool with just a handful of higher-level questions is also available for download from the website shown here. Another early task for the incident response team will be to take advantage of the strategic threat intelligence sources which are being used to inform the cyber risk management team. In addition to the threat reports, it's useful to have tactical and operational threat intelligence. Tactical information exchange is usually available within an operating community. A good example of this is the financial services FS ISAC. FS ISAC is an intelligence sharing community for the banking industry. This allows organisations to get early warnings and real-time information about the kind of activities that are impacting other members of the community. At an operational level, the use of mechanisms for distributing indicators of compromise provides real-time actionable intelligence for feeding into firewalls and intrusion detection devices. MITRE has been leading the development of standards for operational feed mechanisms, and the STIX taxi protocols are widely recognized within the incident response community. Incident response procedures need to be defined and installed. An issue tracking system is an important tool to enable effective incident management from operational detection through to resolution and recovery. While a standard service management or IT operations ticket system may include incident tracking, it may not satisfy the full requirements for security incident handling. The Hive is an open source cybersecurity incident management system which runs in the cloud and allows multiple teams to collaborate on incident investigations. It enables automated analysis at scale of incoming incident information and includes integrated real-time threat intelligence. Another requirement is to establish a set of response playbooks which detail the actions to be taken for specific categories of incident. Many incident response teams create a jump kit, which is a portable case that contains materials that may be needed during an investigation. A jump kit typically includes a laptop, loaded with networking and forensic software, backup devices, blank media, and basic networking equipment and cables. The preparation stage is a good time to build relationships in the incident response community, so that access to information and support comes naturally during a crisis. It's also a good time to build relationships inside the company, particularly with the IT team, so that there's no political stumbling blocks when a response is necessary. Finally, incident responders will need to be able to function effectively when managing the containment of an incident, and this means having pre-authorization to take unilateral action and make or direct emergency changes. The last thing a good crisis needs is decision-making by committee. With a team established, the key element of ongoing preparation is cyber crisis exercises. These exercise the incident response procedures, as well as the skills of the team, and provide visibility of the impact of a cybersecurity incident on the organization.
Guys, I know you might be wondering, why isn't he saying anything? He used to like to talk a lot. I know, right, guys? I feel I'm enjoying it, and I know you guys are enjoying it as well. So there's no need of pausing like I just did right now to interrupt. But of course, the instructor is laying these things down in a way that I'm personally understanding them. I want to believe you are as well. But tell me, tell me in the comments, write me a mail. Let me know if you have questions, if you have certain topics that you're not finding easy to understand or to grasp, or you're finding some certain um, um, terminologies, not really going, as smooth for you. Let me know. Let me know in the comment section. Let me know on the email. Write to me. Send me a message. Let me know what it is you might probably need help with, and of course, be sure for me to be there.
The ENISA website provides a substantial amount of training and exercise material, which can be used for internal CERT training and as the basis for customization to the wider crisis management program. This includes handbooks, tools, and a full program of pre-exercise training through to complete exercises. Let's look at the operational response phases of incident response. In the NIST model of incident response, these are detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, and post-incident activities. Detection and analysis is the non-stop process of monitoring for evidence of a cyber attack, and this is the job of the SOC analyst. During the detection phase, the SOC analyst is looking for evidence of malware or intrusive behavior coming into the organization from external sources. This will usually involve watching real-time alerting screens, which run 24/7. The analyst is also looking for evidence of malware that has succeeded in penetrating the organization by running file scans and monitoring for signals going out to the malware's command and control servers. A further requirement is to monitor for lateral malicious movement between systems inside the organization to detect malware or an intruder that's penetrating deeper into our networks. Here's an example of the monitoring screen which SOC analysts use. This is the Splunk system, but there are others such as Greylog and ElkStack, each with its own pros and cons. All of them, however, digest log records and raise alerts when certain conditions are met. Life in the operations room monitoring for attack isn't easy. It involves many hours of staring at screens of scrolling log records and alerts for candidate incidents which are relevant to pull out and investigate further. Even when there's real evidence of an incident, such as a crashed server, it's often difficult to determine whether the incident is just an IT issue or whether it really is security related and, if so, the type, extent and magnitude of the problem. Picking cyber attacks often requires as much intuition as intelligence. Another challenge is that many alert sources such as IDS have a high rate of false positives. Being under-responsive will let the attack in, but being over-responsive means there's a risk of crying wolf. When an incident is confirmed as being security related, incident responders will often be asked to analyse ambiguous, contradictory and incomplete symptoms to determine what's happened. This is where an analyst's skill really becomes important. Signs of an incident fall into one of two categories. A precursor is a sign that an incident may occur in the future. A port scan may be a precursor to an attack, as an adversary would likely do surveillance before launching a hard attack. Similarly, the release of an exploit in the wild to attack a known vulnerability in the organization would be a precursor to an attack. An indicator is a sign that an incident may have occurred or may be occurring now. A beaconing connection back to an unusual IP address may be an indicator that malware is attempting to make a command and control connection. Many of the alerts which are raised in the operations room will be false positives, and it's important to validate any detection before raising alarms. Understanding normal behaviour is one of the best ways of discriminating between false precursors and indicators and real ones. Having a knowledge base helps, as this can be used to quickly determine whether the same anomaly has been seen before. Here's what a traffic flow monitoring screen looks like. With this, a SOC analyst can check for unusual flows of information, such as might occur in a major data breach. And here's another showing unusually large amounts of traffic going to a port which normally has minimal traffic flows. Detection may involve correlating information over a period of time. Today's analytical tools tend to use big data analytics as a key strategy to detect long and slow APT infections. Deep packet inspection can be used to provide a detailed snapshot of activity on a particular part of the network, and this may give more context to the precursor or indicator. Host-based packet capture tools such as Wireshark can be used, as can network-based devices such as FireEye and NetWitness. Once an indicator has turned into an incident, prioritization is perhaps the most critical decision point in the incident handling process. Incidents shouldn't be handled on a first-come, first-served basis, but should be prioritized based on the criticality to the business. SOC analysts don't just wait for an attack to be detected. They can be proactive and hunt for any threats that might have got into the system undetected. Threat hunting involves both looking for the threat agent itself or by detecting traces of activity related to the threat agent. For example, finding a file of user credit cards in a temporary shared folder or finding an account which shouldn't exist are both evidence that there may have been an attack. A comprehensive set of threat characteristics, what are known as indicators of compromise, are necessary to enable the threat hunter to search for known threats. We can also use advanced analytics and big data sets to look for traces of threat activity in logs. This is how we might find beaconing, the regular connections malware sends out to its command and control system. The threat hunting process is a continuous process of looking around for a trigger to provide the context for a specific investigation, the investigation itself, and then resolution through taking action to mitigate the threat that has been found. Early containment is necessary to stop an incident overwhelming resources or increasing the level of damage it inflicts. Pre-authorization to take action enables containment and allows time to develop a tailored remediation strategy. Containment decisions, such as disconnecting a system, are much easier to make if a response plan template for this kind of incident has been predetermined. Separate containment strategies for each major incident type need to be prepared and pre-authorized. Most incidents will require an ongoing investigation to trace back to the source and the cause of the attack, and this will occur in parallel with containment and recovery activities. This is likely to be the primary role for cyber incident responders, with IT and networks taking the lead on containment and recovery. Access to a wide range of sensor information is important to getting the network visibility that's required to fit all the pieces together. If the incident is serious, then it's likely that a major incident management event will be called. This will typically be run by IT or network operations and will be under the control of the MIM manager. A MIM consists of a group of key stakeholders establishing regular meetings or conference calls to monitor the progress of incident resolution, make decisions collaboratively, and coordinate messaging. Although the primary reason for gathering evidence during an incident is to resolve the incident, it may also be needed for legal proceedings. In such cases, it's important to clearly document how all evidence, including compromised systems, has been preserved using an official chain of custody evidence tag. After an incident has been contained, eradication may be necessary to delete malware, disable breached user accounts, and identify and mitigate all vulnerabilities that were exploited. It's important to eradicate the issues not only on the affected hosts, but on all hosts that could be affected through the same or a similar attack. For example, removing a default administrator account on one server whilst leaving the same account open on another is just asking for more trouble. The last and probably most important rule when responding to an incident is to continue monitoring for other incidents. An attack may well be a diversion in order to gain more subtle access somewhere else on the network.
We're back at it, guys. We're back at it. We're back at our quiz. That's what we're back at. So, what is an important tool to enable effective incident management? A cyber crisis exercise, an issue tracking system, a jump kit. Obviously, it's an issue tracking system. I know we're supposed to send these answers by me, right? What should happen when an indicator is turned into an incident? Define the incident as a precursor, handle the incident on first come, first served basis. No, we don't do this at all. Decide which incident is a priority. Okay, so I've solved two of the questions. So you guys, the next two, you should send them to my mail. You know how we do this. So just right before we do that, sorry, let me read out the question. So, which stage of the threat hunting process preferences utilizing the range of network and endpoint technologies. So last question, in order to have a common language for incidents, the US CERT defines seven categories. Which incident represents category zero? You know, while we were watching the video, I just thought, oh, this question might come out, and it did. It did. It really did. Okay, guys, so let's see how I did. Okay, so we are um back at the uh back at the last topic, which is the cyber diplomacy, and then we call it a wrap up for our first course, which is the cybersecurity foundations. Really, I hope you guys enjoyed these. I hope you gained a lot from this study session. So let's wrap it up with the last topic on cyber diplomacy, and then we look at what we have next to cover on our next uh, session.
Communications providers needed to be able to connect data services through global. With the advent of the internet, there came a need to interconnect certain aspects of information technology. Telecommunications providers needed to be able to connect data services through global gateways, and with that came the need to provide security at those gateways. Electronic information evolved from simple bulletin boards to sophisticated websites, and a simple exchange of text messages evolved to the now ubiquitous electronic mail system. Such evolution required establishing global technical standards for interconnectivity and security. The Internet Engineering Task Force had been producing technical requests for comments, or RFCs, from the start of the Internet. Shortly thereafter, ISO, the International Standards Organization, initiated a project to develop a more sophisticated set of standards known as Open Systems Interconnect, or OSI. These were not widely adopted, and the IETF continues to be the driving force in Internet standardization. Coordination of Internet addressing is managed by the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. ICANN, as it's known, is an American-based organization responsible for the databases which determine Internet naming and traffic routing. While this arrangement is designed to ensure the stable and secure operation of the Internet, it also gave America control of the Internet. This became a bone of contention with some of the other cyber-savvy nations. As early as 2008, there were signs that Russia was concerned about US control over the Internet and was considering breaking away and running its own national network. This was also driven by Russia's goal of managing the information available to its citizens. China also was making sure that free information and Western culture did not permeate the emerging Chinese cyberspace domain. The Great Firewall of China, with its estimated 50,000 cybersecurity defenders, carries out a highly effective program of cyber control and surveillance of its citizens. By 2010, the West was becoming very nervous that the global economic miracle being realized through the Internet was about to crash should the Internet become a splinternet. This led the UK to run the first of what was to be an ongoing program of global conferences on cyberspace. The conference considered a set of 7 principles for use of the Internet, which provided the foundation for maintaining a global network while ensuring nations were able to operate within their own culture. The 7 principles proposed at the start of the initiative were as follows. Proportionality. Governments should act in cyberspace in accordance with national and international law. Accessibility. All people should be able to access cyberspace. Respect. Users of cyberspace should show tolerance and respect for diversity of language, culture and ideas. Human rights. The Internet should encourage the right to privacy and protection of intellectual property for all people. Openness. Cyberspace should be an open forum for innovation and the free flow of ideas, information and expression. Collaboration. Nations should work collectively to tackle the threat from criminals acting online. And competition. The Internet should be a competitive environment which ensures a fair return on investment in network services and content. Before moving on, take a moment to think about these principles. How well do they fit with the approach the US, UK, Russia and China takes to the Internet? The principles tabled at the first cyberspace conference have evolved into the United Nations cyber norms, the rules of normally acceptable behaviour for any nation using the Internet. These are managed by the group of governmental experts at the UN's Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA. The United Nations encourages peaceful use of the Internet through adherence to the set of cyber norms and through an active programme of cyber diplomacy. UNODA provides a full training course on cyber diplomacy, which includes a module on cyber norms, rules and principles. Implementing cyber norms isn't always easy, however. The first cyber norm is cooperation between states in order to increase stability and cybersecurity, and to discourage harmful cyber practices, particularly those that might pose threats to international peace and security. There's been a lot of progress on cooperation, with nations maintaining a technical focus and avoiding political issues. The second cyber norm is a duty of care over incidents. This means not jumping to conclusions and making sure that all aspects of the incident are considered. This includes addressing the challenges of determining accurate attribution and understanding the impact that's occurred. This is important to avoid misunderstandings and wrongful blame escalating into a more serious event. The third cyber norm is that states should not knowingly allow their territory to be used for malicious cyber activities, including launching cyber attacks and running malicious servers. This is a challenging norm to uphold, especially when private citizens or groups respond to international events by launching private attacks, or when a state relays their attacks through another country. The fourth cyber norm is similar to the first in that it involves cooperation between states. However, the focus in this norm is to counter terrorist and criminal use of cyber. The norm suggests that nations can exchange information, assist each other, and pursue prosecution as part of bi- and multilateral cooperation. The fifth cyber norm is to respect human rights on the Internet, including freedom of expression and privacy online. There are many cultural challenges in meeting this norm, and challenges also with the growing use of misinformation and oversight of social media. As a result, this norm encourages nations to apply the same rights online as exist in their nation offline. The next norm is similar to the third norm, encouraging nations not to carry out or support malicious cyber activities, but with a focus on those that impact critical infrastructure. This is the first of 3 norms relating to critical infrastructure. Following this is the second critical infrastructure norm, encouraging nations to proactively protect their critical infrastructure from attack. The third critical infrastructure norm is that nations are encouraged to respond to requests from other nations whose critical infrastructure is under attack, particularly where that attack emanates from or relays through their nation. The ninth cyber norm is to take steps to protect the supply chain from being compromised, starting with nations where information technology products are designed and developed. This is a challenging norm for technology producing countries where the temptation to subvert equipment is high. The 10th norm is about sharing vulnerability information between nations to support early global mitigation. The final norm again encourages nations not to carry out or support malicious cyber activity, this time with a focus on the systems of the computer emergency response teams of other nations. Take a moment to consider the fifth cyber norm, which covers freedom of expression and privacy online. We're seeing a lot of hateful commentary on the internet, some of which is nation-state generated to influence another nation's opinion. Is this okay because we're encouraging freedom of speech? Consider the privacy of terrorists communicating about an attack they're planning. Should they be allowed to do this in private? And if not, then how do we manage legitimate privacy concerns? The United Nations cyber norms set out what are generally accepted behaviours on the internet and have evolved significantly from the initial London Principles. While laudable, there is a big gap between what nations accept as global norms and what they practice as global participants. The Global Forum on Cyber Exchange was established during the 2015 GCCS meeting in The Hague with the aim of strengthening cyber capacity building globally. At the New Delhi GCCS meeting in 2017, the GFCE launched the Global Agenda for Cyber Capacity Building, and in doing so became the global coordinating body for capacity building. The GFCE has 5 themes: cybersecurity policy and strategy, cyber incident management and critical infrastructure protection, countering cybercrime, cybersecurity culture and skills, and cybersecurity standards. The GFCE encourages voluntary participation by governments, private companies, civil society, the technology industry, and academia in order to share expertise. The GFCE operates a number of conferences, meetings, working groups, and task forces, and provides a clearinghouse to enable participants to offer their services and expertise to countries which need assistance in developing their cyberspace. This is achieved through the use of a collaboration portal called Sybil. The GFCE provides a range of reports on the development of cybersecurity and resilience and cyber diplomacy, and these are available via the GFCE Sybil portal. Sybil also provides details of the various projects by beneficiary country. Here we see the first 4 of 27 projects relating to assisting Cambodia develop its cyber expertise. As cybersecurity collaboration between governments and private industry and other nations has grown, it became apparent there was a need for managing information exchange without resorting to national classification schemes. Information needed to flow freely to those that needed it, but not be accessible to the point where it compromised the global cybersecurity activities it was intending to assist. This led to the creation of a scheme called the Traffic Light Protocol, which adds markings to information being exchanged to indicate how freely the information can be shared. There are 4 marking levels, 3 of which reflect the colours used in traffic lights. White. Where information is marked white, this information can be freely shared as there is no risk of misuse. Green information can be circulated widely within the recipient sector community, but not via publicly accessible channels such as an open website. An example of this would be sharing a sector-specific malware analysis. Information marked TLP Amber can be shared with members of the recipient's organization and with clients or customers who need the information to protect themselves. Once again, this information should not be shared via publicly accessible channels. This form of information might include such items as sensitive indicators of compromise. And red. This is the highest level of marking in the protocol, and it's used when information is intended for the recipient only. This may be an individual or a committee. Unauthorized disclosure of TLP red information could lead to impacts on a party's privacy, reputation, or operations if misused. Examples of TLP red might include tentative attribution of a cyber attack. ANISA provides more detailed information on what we might need to think about when we receive TLP marked information.
Alright, guys, so we're back at it, back at our quiz. Um, we have three questions here. So, at the global conference on cyberspace, seven principles were proposed. Each principle refers to the right to privacy and protection of intellectual property. The principle states that the internet should encode the right to privacy and protection of intellectual property for easy, easy. Second question. The Global Forum on Cyber Expertise (GFCE) created five themes to help strengthen cyber capacity building globally. Which of these themes was not covered, or the theme that the GFCE helped to strengthen by capacity building? And then finally, the MS uses traffic light protocol for information being exchanged with government and other private companies. Which color would be used to sharing a sector specific malware analysis? Well, we saw this here, and sector specific, it's not red, it's not white, so it should be green. Yep. Okay, so guys, that's how we did on today's quiz. So, um, what's next?
I'd really like to thank you for joining me for this LinkedIn Learning course.
I would like to thank you all for joining me too on this training boot camp with the help of our dear LinkedIn learning platform. Let's keep listening.
I hope you enjoyed learning about cybersecurity. This course is just the beginning, and there's much more to learn about cybersecurity, whether you've got a casual or professional interest. There's always something new in cybersecurity, and if you're interested in learning more, then check out the full security segment of the library, where new security testing courses are added regularly. You'll find courses on a range of security topics, including the new cloud and Internet of Things technologies. I'd also like to invite you to go to my author page, where you can find some additional courses on cybersecurity. If you're interested in ethical hacking, then you'll find courses which will help you gain your certificate of ethical hacking. If you want to learn about some of the basic tools used in cybersecurity, then Cybersecurity for IT Professionals is for you. Thanks again for joining me on this course, and I hope to see you again soon.
All right, guys. So that's it. Um, so we are on to the next learning path. It is an exam. Okay, so there's an exam. Um, for the cybersecurity foundations. Um, so we're not going to take the exam. What I want us to know is, let's go back to the learning path. So we're done with these. Our next um, sessions would come on the cybersecurity threat landscape. So we've understood the cybersecurity foundations, which was really a great, was a great, course. Really learned a lot, and thank you all for joining me. Really, so, but of course, there's more to come. You heard from Mr. Malcolm himself, or the instructor. We still have those who would be interested in penetration testing, ethical hacking. There's more to learn. We're just beginning to understand the foundations, and I really hope this is really adding, some sort of knowledge to your already existing, bank of knowledge. So our next discussion would be on the cybersecurity threat landscape. Then we'll learn the OWASP 10. We'll also discuss cybersecurity carriers and certifications. I'm really interested in why this is actually 2 hours course. Okay, so it's understanding the cybersecurity carrier field. There's still really this really, you know very interesting things to learn here. For instance, under the cybersecurity carriers, would hear from a specialist, an analyst, an auditor, consultant, engineer, administrator, architect, managing director. So this is really great. So, and of course the certifications as well. So you can see different certifications as well here where we're able to learn from or see what it actually entails. Then of course, building a career path. So this is actually a very interesting course, to be honest with you. And I really can't wait for us to get into every of these modules right here. So we're going to be completing the next one, two, three, and four. And of course, landing the cybersecurity first job is one that I'm also excited to also, bring to you guys as well. So we're going to be understanding cybersecurity careers here, um, and then basic steps we need to launch our career, how to build our brand, uh, of course, networking, and of course, landing the first role. So I know you guys are really eager. I mean, some of you might just be like, "Guy, can you just jump onto that model?" But we'll take it. I mean, you can see how interesting cybersecurity foundations was. So imagine how we're gonna, get how it's gonna get more interesting when we discuss the cybersecurity threat landscape, when we learn about the OWASP top 10, and then start discussing the careers and certification. And then from here, we can now advance into those specific roles, but of course, you know, we have a lot to still cover. So that's really great. I'm really excited, and thank you all for really um, um, getting on this journey with me. Um, okay, so this is my profile. You can also connect with me at a video delay. So I'm just gonna add this to my profile just so you guys know that we're in this together. Yeah, we're in this together. So that will be all for this session, and I would like to see you all, of course, in our next. We call it boot camp, yeah. So I would like to see you all in our next boot camp sessions. But uh, thank you so much for completing this first course with me. Let's move on to the second one. Remember, your quiz, questions, your reviews, send them to my email, and I'll be looking forward to hearing from you and listening to you. Till next time, you know how we do it.